Hello, Namaste, Bonjour book lovers. Remember the review of the book From Everest with Love, authored by Miss Nilima Pudota? Hope you liked it. I also got to know that she's not only famous in mountaineering and literature, but also in various other fields, becoming an all-rounder. I had a lot of questions gushing in my mind. So I asked if Nilima ma'am can have a small talk session with Book Talkies, and she accepted it immediately. And here's presenting you Miss Nilima Pudota, one of my inspirations. Hi ma'am, welcome to today's video. And first of all, thanks a lot for being with us today, like having this conversation and accepting my request to be here today.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure. It's my honor.
So, ma'am, how is lockdown treating you?
Lockdown, it's okay. I've gotten used to it now. In fact, I'm liking this time, unusually me. For the first few weeks, it felt very suffocating because I'm an outdoors person, so it felt very suffocating initially.
Yeah, I saw those, like these live sessions you were having in Instagram. So, ma'am, now are you completely into this yoga training and fitness training? Or are you back into your software job?
No, I have quit my software job in 2015 December.
Yeah.
And then after my Everest climb, I could have gone back, I don't know, but I think I've just made that huge leap of change, such huge radical change in my life. I did not feel like I fit into that part of the corporate anymore.
Oh, yeah, that sounds quite different, because most of the people are nowadays aiming to reach this corporate world, get themselves happily settled in corporate world, and you have a completely different perspective.
It's not like corporate was my end goal. I always used these things as milestone to follow my passion. So corporate, I used corporate and to fuel my job, to fuel my passion. What
prompted you to aim at conquering the highest peak in the world when you're already a topper in various other fields like I don't know, it's Bharatanatyam or Kuchipudi, classical dance, and yoga, your global languages, traditional and contemporary martial arts, cookery, and also finally the painting. I've seen this wall where you painted like some wings, I guess.
You see this behind me? That I painted that.
Wow, that's so cool.
This is like the lockdown. One of the things I did it in the lockdown.
Oh, really? Yeah, I see a very good artistic skills in you, along with these poetic skills, because I've read a lot of poems in the book itself. So what prompted you, ma'am?
So it's I've never confined myself to a particular identity. It feels suffocating for me when people term me if you stick yourself in your personal life as well as professional life anywhere. Everyone wants good growth, right?
Yes.
If you're in a professional life, if you're in a corporate, you cannot be comfortable being a team leader. You want to go up to team manager. One day you want to lead the whole floor. One day, that's how you grow, right?
Yes.
It's the same. That's something similar that happened with me in my personal life. So as I grew up, I was not just into academics and all. It was an overall growth. My parents believed in having wholesome growth, so they've also seen the energies that I carried. So they thought of me as a hyperactive kid. So they divided my energies into multiple directions. Like they enrolled me into Bharatanatyam and classical music and a lot of other things, yoga and all. So I think I've done what I've done in my academics as well as in corporate because uh, I had this kind of wholesomeness in my life that it gave me so many different perspectives. My communication skills is better than a lot of other people. My perspective in life, like optimism, a lot of other things. Like all of these things are important to are your life skills basically. Nowadays, you think of choosing one of them as a career. Like you're asking, I am good at cooking or I am good at yoga and all. But there was a point, there was a point in time when no one thought of all these as a career option. They were just life skills. You had to learn how to cook. You beat a woman or a man, you had to learn how to cook, and you had to be fit. Everyone was into yoga. Like every street had a yoga, class, a yoga center or something like that, and with a very nominal fee, everyone used to do yoga. That used to be the culture I grew up. Usually, that used to be that culture, and it was just a part of it. And these are all life skills. Martial arts these days, defense is a life skill.
Yeah.
You can't, taking them as a profession is at a later stage a decision that you make. So all of these, and then when I traveled, I did everything. So like I mentioned before, whatever I did in terms of earning money for myself, I always invested that in exploring, in learning something new, in something that will make me happy. So I started traveling, and I started, slowly I started understanding what mountains means, and it fascinated me as to I started trekking and then slowly climbing a few mountains. It was a very conscious decision. It didn't happen overnight that I took this decision that I want to climb Everest more. It was a very conscious decision, and I made that leap of faith towards the Everest.
Oh, really? Your passion, the way you achieved it was literally like I was completely in a shocked mood or surprised. I was completely surprised because the way your passion drove you to climb the peak, to attempt to climb the peak. And what was your first thought when you finally decided that you've mentioned that this is not a single night decision and you have taken some time, quality time to take this decision? So what was your thought when you decided and you told others that you're gonna do this expedition? And was it like confusion, excitement, or like what were you getting at that moment?
Okay. So that confusion, that nervousness, that chaos reigned for a very long time. And it's probably why I took it slow. I went to the Everest Base Camp, and after, if there was no earthquake or if there was nothing at the Everest Base Camp, I would have probably gone ahead and climbed other peaks. And I don't know if I would have made it to the Everest also or not. 1,000-meter peak, and I probably would have climbed one or two other 8,000-meter peaks, and then would have thought of climbing the Everest. Everest was there on my mind, but it was somewhere very last, very corners of my bucket list. It was it's a very huge decision to make to climb the Everest. But when I went to the Everest Base Camp 2015, it changed everything, because the 3 days that I was there and experiencing the earthquake and feeling that that seeing the danger of life looming around me, seeing death so closely, I took that decision to myself. I did not want to owe another life explaining to people and trying to convince people and proving them. No, I made that wherever that was in the last annals of my diary or whatever, it had to come back. It had to come up. It was a priority. It became a priority. 2015, I told myself, if I'm going to make it alive out of this place and go back to Hyderabad, come back to Hyderabad, then I'll train myself hard. And the next year, 2016, I'll make a summit attempt on Everest. That's what I made myself very clear.
Yes,
And that is when I told my decision. When I came out is when, like you mentioned the point, right? When did I tell everyone? Is when I came out, is when I told everyone when 2015, immediately after the Everest Base Camp, May, when I came, is when I told that I'm going to train for something the Everest.
So you were like, I read that in the initial pages of the book that you had survived this earthquake and they rescued you from that place, and again you went back there. So how did you feel while you are stepping back again? Because while you are while you were getting trained for that camp, like for the trek, then you might have this thought like, yeah, I have to pass through the same airport where I was rescued earlier. So how did you have that feeling in you? Like, were you scared?
I knew it. I knew it. I knew that, see, when you're training for Everest, I know that this is the route I have to take and I have to go to the same airport. And pre-Everest expedition, I especially went from the south side to a acclimatization climb. I took Mera Peak. So that was again going back to Lukla. So it was Lukla is a starting point of Everest Base Camp. So it was a conscious. It's a conscious decision. You train your mind. I had a 1 year time to make up my mind to this fact that I will have to go back. I will have to go back to Nepal, and that. During training for the Everest, when I climbed other different peaks, I've experienced the difficulties of the mountains again and again, over and over again. So it prepares your mind also. There was a mountain that I climbed, there's a glacier that I climbed in 2015 during my basic mountaineering course. It's called Thajiwas Glacier. So when I was, Thajiwas Glacier is known for its 36 avalanche prone areas. So it's a very high risk glacier. So just going, trying to reach to the glacier, there was a point we saw, we heard a huge avalanche and we saw an avalanche coming. So it's like it's preparing yourself to the unpredictabilities of the nature, right? You know that these are all the things that might happen, and still there are so many things that you know that we cannot predict.
You truly are a real warrior, ma'am. You faced such those many consequences, and again you kept on trying to reach Everest. Really, ma'am, you should get a big lot. Yes, ma'am. So you had your health conditions were also not very good, right? You were mentioning in the book that you had this pulmonary tuberculosis and then a lot of other health issues.
Health conditions, yeah.
Yeah, so how did you acclimatize yourself to the lifestyle of a climber, to that body conditions of a climber, and how did you face people at that time, and how did you face yourself?
Okay, yeah, so when 2014, I was like in the most baddest condition of my life, the most worst physical condition of my life. 2014 as well. If you've seen the book, if you've seen the pictures in the book, you've seen one picture of me where I'm very fat and all. I was almost 85 to 88 kgs, and I was just recovering from pulmonary tuberculosis, and my lungs were shrunk by 15% and another one by 18%, and the after effects of the medication of the DOTS treatment is what goes. The DOTS treatment is what you get for pulmonary tuberculosis. So after that treatment, one of the side effects of it is gout. It lasted for about a year. So that 2014 was the most
terrible year.
Difficult year in terms of physical things, and all. It was 13-14 both years together, and then but I was also working with corporate, and I was also a team leader by then, and I was handling a few people and all. It was very stressful, and I was extending my work hours by 13, 14, 16 hours, and I was working over the weekends. I was taking all the stress from work. So I put on weight, and I spoiled my posture. I ruined my posture. So a lot of things happened, spondylitis, a lot of things. And I think that there was a point I told to myself, enough is enough, because I was never that kind of person. I was always active with Bharatanatyam and all. I stopped everything because the work pressure was getting on to me. I told myself enough, and then I don't recall exactly which moment was it, but maybe it was the moment when I saw 88 kgs on the weighing scale. And then I'm like, I'm done. And I started going back to my dance and started practicing Kalari, yoga and other stuff. And I also completely forgot about my things that I wanted to do, like the dreams that you have, the bucket list. I completely forgot because work was taking over. Then I recalled that Everest Base Camp is something that I wanted to do, and I started training for the base camp. So if you see my pictures, when I went to the Everest Base Camp, I lost a lot of weight, but I was still 75 kgs. But I was feeling strong. I was feeling very nice. I made it. But I think I realized what mountains were, and I knew that if I had to make a summit attempt, I have to train drastically. I knew that. And I came back. A lot of things happened. I trained like a lot. Like I just I grilled myself. That's all I can say. I grilled myself, and I touch wood. I had very good coaches. I took very good coaches for myself, and both the coaches that I took for myself for strength training and endurance, both of them are national level players for India. They've represented India in many platforms overseas also, international platforms also. So I took their guidance every moment. I took it very seriously, and I invested. This was all before sponsors pitched in to sponsor my training or my mountaineering expedition. So I put in my money. I was very serious about it. And then also there was a point where I had to, after my one of my expedition to a 6,000 meter peak, there was a point I realized that I cannot climb with my lens end. I used to wear glasses then, so I cannot climb with lens because there's not enough moisture in the air when you go up. So my lens is just like it's just not getting the right amount of moisture it needs, and it's just pricking my pupils and all. So I realized that I cannot climb with lens anymore. At the same time is when one of my instructors at one of the team leaders of that expedition, a woman told me her story of aborting Everest expedition at 7,200 meters because her glasses broke. And then she opened up her I think I mentioned this in the book. Her name is Surabhi, and she opened her set of spare glasses that she got it in her luggage. But the amount of pressure difference these glasses were packed in a box. So the minute you open up, it's like the pressure difference you feel in a Coke bottle. So it just exploded, and all of the glasses exploded up. So she couldn't go any further because she was deprived of good eyesight basically because she was having no glasses on. So that is when I decided that I also have to take LASIK for my eyes. And I remember mine was not a normal LASIK because LASIK has immediate recovery. You recover in a few days. I've undergone a much complicated procedure for my eye condition. It was called PRK surgery, and it took a month for me to recover. During the whole month, I remember I was still training. I couldn't see, but I remember I wrote this in the book, and I'm very grateful for my trainer Suresh sir. I'm very grateful because that was a time I couldn't see. I'm running, I couldn't see what is ahead of me. He held my hand. He held my water bottle in one of his hand, and he held my hand with his other hand, and he made me run. because I couldn't
my
see
God.
anything after a point. So he made me run, and that's how I used to train. The whole month usually people are on rest, but I continued my training. I used to run. I used to act like training was everything for me. My life depended on training, and I knew that my life, whatever will happen to me on Everest, it depends on training. I will come back if I will, if I do not have enough money, I would have borrowed from some place. I would have gotten as a debt and all. I would have made it possible to go to the Everest. But if I did not have the right training, right health, if I'm not in the best, best
Position.
fitness of my life, I will not be able to return back from the Everest. My body will be one of the 200 bodies, 200 to 300 bodies lying on the Everest. I did not want that to happen. So my life literally depends on training. Training is what I did morning to evening, mentally, physically. That when I'm tired physically, I'll come, I will take some rest, and I'll start reading mountaineering books. That's what my life was.
So, mom, can you suggest any books? You know what? Nilima ma'am told a lot of interesting stuff about her favorite books and a lot of other information. Check out part 2 of this interesting session to know more. Thank you. Signing off, Sriyashika ji. Happy Book Era.